Hello and welcome to this session. My name is John Berryman. I'm a retired Elim pastor and also now running a course called Be Healthy Church. And I hope you'll enjoy this session. And this is entitled, Do You Want to Be Healed? Now, you might say that's a pretty stupid question to ask in any day and age. If someone is sick, of course they want to be healed. But actually, I've not always found that to be true. I remember a case way back in when we were pastoring a church in St. Ives, and a young guy came in and he'd had a bit of an accident with his car. And he was telling me about it on Sunday morning, and he was saying how his back was really bad. And I said, oh, that's no problem. Let's pray for your back right now. And he said, no, please don't pray for it, because I've got someone coming to see me about compensation on Monday. Now, that young man, unfortunately, had a bad back for a long time. And I do really believe that if he had taken the courage to be prayed for that moment and accepted whatever came his way, that he would have been healed. But everything is not always that straightforward, is it? So I hope you'll join with me in this and see the questions that I'm really asking. And perhaps you might be ill in other things and with your body. And you might say it is a stupid question, but let's have a look and see what the scriptures have to say as well. First, let's look at this one that you will really know, the healing at Bethesda. And I'm sure you've read this before and so on, but let's read it from John 5. After these things, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there in Jerusalem by the sheep gate, a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porticos. In these lay a multitude of those who were sick, blind, lame, and withered, waiting for the moving of the waters. For an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred up the water. Whoever then first, after the stirring of the water, stepped in was made well from whatever with which he was afflicted. A man who was there had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been a long time in that condition, he said to him, do you wish to get well? The sick man answered him, sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I am coming, another steps down before me. Jesus said to him, get up, pick up your pallet and walk. Immediately the man became well and picked up his pallet, and he began to walk. That's a lovely story, isn't it? And the story of someone that had a long-term condition. 38 years is a long time to be sitting waiting. His excuse was that no one had helped him. Were they all that selfish in that area at that time? Perhaps they were. Just it took Jesus to come along and put the final hand to it. But no, he didn't put him in the water. Jesus said, get up and walk. And the problem was, I wonder, someone was taking care of this chap for 38 years. Someone must have been helping him in some ways, but he didn't get into the water. He obviously knew that he was ill. Now, that's not always the case. Of course, this next one we're going to look at is another one which is perhaps even simpler, but harder to deal with. This is the story of Naaman. You'll know the story. We're going to look at these 2 stories and then unpack it a little bit. 2 Kings 5. Now Naaman, captain of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man with his master and highly respected. Because of him, the Lord had given victory to Aram. The man was also a valiant warrior, but he was a leper. Now the Arameans had gone out in bands and had taken captive a little girl from the land of Israel, and she waited on Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, I wish that my master were with the prophet who is in Samaria. Then he would cure him of his leprosy. Naaman went in and told his master, saying, thus and thus spoke the girl who is from the land of Israel. Then the king of Aram said, go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. He departed and took with him 10 talents of silver and 6,000 shekels of gold and 10 changes of clothes. He brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, and now this letter comes to you. Behold, I have sent Naaman, my servant, to you, that you may cure him of his leprosy. When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, am I God to kill and make alive, that this man is sending word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? But consider now and see how he is seeking to quarrel against me. It happened when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, that he sent word to the king saying, why have you torn your clothes? Now let him come to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses and his chariots and stood at the doorway of the house of Elisha. Elisha sent a messenger to him saying, go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh will be restored to you, and you will be clean. But Naaman was furious and went away and said, behold, I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and cure the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. Then his servant came near and spoke to him and said, my father, had the prophet told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, wash and be clean? So he went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. A simple step, but sometimes we don't want to follow the simple steps. We want the complicated ones. We want the doctor to perhaps confirm that we have something wrong, and then we want to go through the medication process, taking the tablets and follow it through. Now, I know that this is true for some people, but it's not true of all people. And I also know that the ability of God to heal through people. Remember, in this situation here, here we see Elisha, and Elisha is coming and meeting with the man to be healed. God didn't come himself. God sent a man. There's another story there where he sends a man to bring salvation to the world, who also is God himself. But so Elisha ministers here and says something quite simple. And sometimes the simple things can just be done through acting out our faith. You know, the Bible says if we have the faith the size of a mustard seed, we can tell that mountain to move. And sometimes we need to activate that faith. If you want to walk on water, what's the saying? You've got to get out of the boat. Now, I didn't know I was ill. You know, I've laughed and said that I want on my tombstone one day, I want it to be written, I told you I was sick. But the real story of this is if you go back into the 1960s, 70s, these are some adverts that I came across, and you know, there's loads of them. And they are doctors smoking cigarettes and recommending that this is what calms you down. And you can see by looking at the pictures that it was ridiculous. But it was seen in the 60s that actually smoking was a rather cool thing to do. And it was common. It was very, very popular. Despite some in the medical profession saying, actually, they've got it wrong and it's going to be a disaster. But those people were happily smoking away, and the tobacco industry had hidden some of the information because the tobacco industry knew before we did that cigarettes were going to, or had the big potential to cause lots of problems. Many of those people didn't know that they were sick, but in fact, they were sick, and it soon became reality. Now, the challenge comes to us today because there is much sickness and much disease, not only in the church, but in the world. Or should I say it the other way around? Not only in the world, but also in the church. You know, type 2 diabetes and obesity is killing many, many thousands of people. And they say it's actually more than the latest pandemic in actual fact. Top scientists, not paid for by the food industry, are warning us today that processed food is damaging our health, and it's as big a problem as cigarettes. Not as cigarettes, but as cigarettes. So we need to take a note of that and understand that what we eat affects our body. Now, we know that our body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, and we know that the Spirit of God lives in us. I can remember someone saying that they've got a big temple to welcome more of God, but that's not how it works. The body is given to us by God to look after, and we have a responsibility to nourish our body and to look after our body. Unfortunately, there is a lot that is thrown at our body, and we need to avoid. And some of the things that we need to avoid, on that, like on that slide there, are processed foods and cans of drink, which actually destroy our body in a slow process. I didn't know I was ill, and now some of these things, of course, we don't know. They're happening on the inside. And if I cut myself with a knife or a razor or barbed wire or bramble, we see blood, and that draws our attention to it. What happens when we eat highly processed food or lots of sugars and starches is that we get inflammation on the inside. Now, you can't see that, but it might show up in other ways through migraines or arthritis is a common one, where people get aches and pains. And what we have got into the habit of doing is two things. In the church, we may go and ask someone to pray for us, which is great. And I believe in the power of prayer, and I believe in the healing power of prayer. Or we may take some medication or a mixture of both. Now, I am not saying that there is no diseases. And the fact is that we will have diseases with us until we go to be with Jesus. But what I am saying is that there are things that we can do to eradicate some of those things in our own life. And this list is not an endless list in this slide. There are so many things. And I have testimonies of people that have recovered from so many things when they have changed their diet. And we need to understand that diet affects. We are what we eat, but it's not our fault. And I want to emphasize that because you have this high blood pressure, or you have illnesses that are listed here, overweight, obesity, it's not necessarily your fault, because you have been bombarded with things that tell you you're healthy, but unfortunately they are not. And we need to get our heads around this and understand it's not our fault, but we have the capability of changing things from here on in. In Genesis 1, it says this, and God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding and seed, and fruit trees on the earth, bearing fruit after their kind, with seed in them. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed after their kind, and trees bearing fruit and seed in them after their kind. And God saw that it was good. Now, I know we have a picture of an apple there and with a little snake, I think, on the ring. But the fact is, we don't know it was an apple, the forbidden fruit, but God gave us fruit and vegetables that were good to eat. The only thing is that man has been playing with them a little bit ever since. A few modifications here and there, which is not always a good thing. Continuing in Genesis a little bit further on, let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after their kind. And it was so. God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps on the ground after its kind. And God saw that it was good. And I love to see cattle grazing, and there's some we had last year, grazing on some luscious clover and grass, and eating what was grown naturally. Grass-fed beef is what it will be, and highly nutritious and good for us. And You know, God put the plants there to feed the animals, to feed us, and some of the plants we eat directly. And nutrition is such a good thing. But what God didn't intend for us to do is to make our own food in everything, adapt slightly, but sometimes we have changed it so much. Hence this statement here: man is the only species clever enough to make his own food and stupid enough to eat it. You know, I can still, at the age of 67, run upstairs 2 at a time. I have lost a fair bit of weight in the last couple of years intentionally. I can't say I've always ever been really overweight, but I was a couple of stone overweight. And I did it through healthy eating. I'm not hungry, ever get hungry. I eat real food, and that is the key to success. And here you see, you know, a panda bear eating bamboo shoots, and you try to feed that panda bear anything else, it will lack energy, and it will get sick, and eventually it will die. Again, with a lion designed to eat meat, and you know, if you take that lion and start feeding it bamboo shoots, it will die. There is no argument about this. And we are born to run on the right fuel, and God created the right stuff for us to eat. When we start playing with it, we have problems, and it's ultra processed foods that seem to be the killer. And we need to keep away from ultra processed food. And when we eat and lots of sugar, we need to avoid sugar. It is a problem to us. We cannot handle it. Our blood is actually made up of 5 grams of sugar. That's all. And when we start loading our bodies with sugar, you're even eating fruit. God intended us to eat fruit, but he didn't intend us to eat fruit every day of the year when as much as possible. You know, that is in excess. That's why fruit comes in season. And so it's learning to eat what is there at the right times, and not stuffing ourselves on the wrong food at the wrong time. So we have the ability to change our outcome because of what we put in. And so that is so important. And you might say, but you know, God's not involved. God is involved in us doing the right thing to get our bodies in the right shape. God is involved in so many ways. I want you to just introduce you. You may have met her, but my daughter, Dr.Anna, Chelamathu, and she is what's called a lightning process practitioner. And here it's being able to introduce people into healing process. And there's many testimonies of people that have been healed from chronic fatigue syndrome and ME. My granddaughter had it and was really very poorly, and did the lightning process. And Anna was amazed of the transformation in her life. Now, Anna is now the only doctor in the UK, as far as I understand, teaching this lightning process as a Christian, using what God has given us, the power of the mind to overcome. And bearing in note what 2 Kings 5:13b says, my father, had the prophet told you to do something great, would you not have done it? How much more when he says to go wash and be clean? Sometimes God uses the foolish things to confound the wise. And I know he's done it with me over the years. But it's amazing. Sometimes little steps can change big things in our life. In John 10:10, it says, the thief comes only in order to steal, kill, and destroy. I've come that you might have life and have it in its abundance, to the full, till it overflows. You see, our battle is not against flesh and blood. It's against the world, the flesh, and the devil. All right? That our own bodies sometimes tell us that we need something, we want something, and there's a big difference in what we need and what we would like to have. And the world is run on a money system. You know, the food industry it's unbelievable, but the food industry set the guidelines of what we are recommended to eat in this country on what they call the eat well plate, which isn't always an eat well plate. So sometimes we need to take simple steps to do something different. And we need to look at what we need to cut out and what we need to add in. We need to pray and we need to fast. And fasting isn't just skipping one bit of food for 1 minute of a day. So wherever you come from, our battle, we need to understand that it's not our fault, but we can do something about it. We can feel better about ourselves and we can live our life totally and fully for Jesus. Remember, the first part of that verse comes from the enemy himself. The thief comes in order to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus, I've written it in red so we understand, Jesus came that we might have life in its fullness. And sometimes we need to search that out and we need to follow and go forward and find the way through to health. Until the next time, be blessed.